Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how to get the best results out of your black and white negative film. Scanning's a bit of a necessary evil, but if you can get good at it, you can get some great results at home. You don't have to pay the lab and you're keeping full creative control over your film. I've got a roll of medium format Ilford FP4. Now I shot this a couple of months ago in Cornwall, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my workflow, my process of getting this from the kind of cut negatives into the scanner, through the software, and I'm going to show you the finished results. Now, these are 6x45 negatives. I shot them on this Bronica ETRS. So, although they're medium format, they're at the small end of the scale. It's really key to get as much detail, kind of clarity, sharpness out of them as possible. What I'm going to do now is jump into loading the film, and then I'm going to walk you through the Silverfast software, how I use it, tips and tricks, the different tools that are available for you. Full disclosure, I have been sponsored by Silverfast, but I am being nice about them, not because they're paying me, but because I think that it's actually really great software. Epson scan's fine, but Silverfast is a really worthwhile step up, and no one really enjoys scanning. It's all about making it as painless and as sort of comfortable as possible. It's a bit of a necessary evil, but if you want to be using digital printing options or even just sharing images online, it is really nice to have a good scan. So I'm going to show you how I make mine and hopefully help you make your own scans. Let's jump into loading the scanner. Loading the scanner might sound really simple, but you have to do it right, otherwise you're going to have problems down the line. The idea is to get the film as flat as possible in the flatbed without any dust, and there are a few tips and tricks to doing that properly. First of all, you have this film holder. Now, your scanner might be different, but they all do the essentially same thing. What it is a plastic frame that can hold the film flat and hold the film at the correct height above the scanning head. What I've got to do is get this film into here, but before I touch it, it's really important that I put on some cotton gloves. Now, they do look a little bit CSI, but it really helps you handle the film, and it also means that you're not going to leave any oily fingerprints or marks on the negatives themselves. Okay, now I've got my gloves on. What I'm going to do is going to spin this round because I'm right-handed. I open up my frame. Now this is just a plastic gate that can hold the film tight in this holder. And now I pick up my strip of film and I find out which way the front of it is by looking for the text. Now when I'm holding the film this way up, I can read, hang on one second. Okay, so this is the top of the film. So it's going to go this way into the holder. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean the back of it. I'm using this rocket blur. This is pretty simple. It's basically a bulb. You squeeze it and it sprays air. So cleaning the back of the negative. Once I'm happy that's clean, I can give a quick blast to the actual scanner itself. And then I'm going to lay this down between the plastic runners. Okay. That looks good. He's nice and central. As you can see, there's enough space for 4, which is great. I'll only be scanning 1 today, but you can see that they're centered in their frame. I'm going to click that down. And if you notice that I only cleaned the back last time, that's because once it's actually locked down into this frame, I can just hold the frame and blast it off here. The frame I'm going to be scanning is this one of the cliffs in the sea mist. So I'm going to give this one extra attention. And once he's clean, I'm going to immediately turn this frame over so that no dust can fall onto it whilst I'm preparing the scanner. Okay, time to open up Silverfast. This is what you get when you first open the software. Now, first things first, I'm going to set the scanner to the film I'm trying to scan. If you look up at these 3 tools in the top left, this is where you select the film type. Now, it is a transparency. All positive films are transparencies, reflectives for scanning prints. So I select that. Negative, positive, or Kodachrome. It is a negative. Obviously, the software and the scanner have the ability to scan these 2 other films, but negative is what I want. And lastly, this is where you choose your color or grayscale options. As you can see, there are different modes for either color or grayscale, or even the raw option. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose 16 to 8-bit grayscale because this is a black and white image. Next up, I have my scan dimensions. I'm just going to quickly type in cliffs, and I'm going to set my output to my desktop. Not particularly interesting. And I'm going to set my resolution to 3200, which I think is around the upper limit of my scanner. Now, next step is to click pre-scan, and what that does is a quick low resolution overview of everything that's loaded into the scanner. You'll see this red box here. This area is the current kind of flatbed area. So as you'll see, this is actually way too big for a single negative. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down onto the frame I'm scanning, and let's have a quick look. It's a pretty rough box that I've just drawn around it, and I could scan all four at the same time, but for the purpose of this I just want to scan the single frame. As you can see, the output in the top left is around 7,000 by 5,000 pixels. So that's about 35 megapixels, 36 megabytes. That looks pretty good to me. The next tool I'm going to look at is this Negafix tool here on the left. Now what this is essentially a jumping off point, or a starting point that Silverfast has designed based on the film and the scanner to give you the kind of look and feel of the film you're shooting. I'm shooting Ilford FP4+, so what I'm going to do is just load those two up so that the film starts in the right place. Now I can click the magnifying glass tool here and give myself a kind of a full screen overview of what I've got. This does take a second, but it's worth it, because when you zoom in you can see a little bit more of the detail in the shadows and the highlights, and it helps when you're setting your tools. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. At this point I can neaten up my red scanning frame, and that looks pretty good. I don't want to have any of the edge of the frame, so I'm just going to be careful to gently crop in a little bit all around the edge. There you go, that looks good to my eyes. Next up, I'm going to use this tool here, which is the auto adjust. This is just going to set my midtone and my black and white points, and this is quite a useful starting point. That's just one click, and as you can see, it's darkened the image, and it seems to have brought up the black point. There's more black in the image. The first tool I'm going to show you is the histogram tool, and what this does is allow you to set your black point, midtones, and white point. If you look at my mouse, what I'm doing now is I'm dragging the black point into the image and placing it adjacent to the end of the histogram. Now what that does is that means that my image actually has a true black point. If it's here, it's actually entirely shades of grey. But as I move this up to the end of the histogram, what I do is I clip, or I set the values around these areas of muscles on the rocks as true 100% black. Likewise for the whites, you can see that as I move this in, I set more and more of the image to white. Now obviously, because most of this image is highlight tones, which I can tell from the histogram, I want to leave this as close to the right side as possible, and that's 255. Now there are areas of white, such as this bit of blown out sky, but as you can see, there are different shades of white as it fades in towards the grey of the cliffs. This midpoint slider allows me to change the histogram slightly, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it to drag more of my image towards the shadows. Now as you can see, I've got more detail coming out of the cliffs, and I've got a slightly darker area of muscles down here. Now that I've done that, I'm actually going to move my black point down a bit and see if I can bring some of that back. Okay, I'm happy with -27, 5 and 255. That looks good. Just going to close this tool and move on to the next one. This tool here is the gradation curves. If you're familiar with Photoshop or Lightroom, you've used this tool before. What this does is it allows me to set the contrast and really the way that the image fades from black into highlights. If I adjust the contrast, what you'll see is that I really get the cliffs standing out against the sky. Okay, I quite like the low contrast feel actually, so I'm going to take -16. The midtone here is actually the same adjustment as the previous tool, so I don't need to change it. Okay, we're done with setting the midtone, contrast, all that good stuff. So the next step is to look at some of the tools that help you bring out extra detail and mask defects. The first tool I'm going to show you is the USM tool. That stands for unsharp mask. If you've used sharpening in Photoshop or Lightroom, again, you will be familiar with this. I'm just going to quickly go through and show you how you can use it with Silverfast. There are 3 tools at the top. You see this one here, which says HQ. This allows you to do a full high quality scan of the entire scan area. So I'm going to click that first. This does take a few minutes, but it is worth it. This essentially does the scan in real time, so you can see the adjustments you make. I'll set my, my loop down to this area of rock here, because I feel it's where the most detail will be visible. I'll save some time. I'll cut to when this is completed. Okay, it took a while, but it's worth it. And as you can see, we've jumped into kind of full HD detail. Now, have a look at this rock. You can see the detail in the mussels and the seaweed. You can also see the grain, and that's a good thing when you're using a flatbed, because they often struggle to resolve grain, which means that I've set my focus correctly. Now, I'm pretty happy with how this works. I mean, this is a tutorial. I'm meant to be showing you how the tool works, but it seems that Auto Sharpness has done a really great job. You have got different options here, so if you looked at it and you said, oh, I want to come back a little bit, I want less sharpening, or even more sharpening, you could use one of these, but I'm happy where it is. If you're familiar with Photoshop and Lightroom, you know how the 3 options, power, radius, and threshold work. I am slightly concerned about the grain, so I'm going to leave these 2 where auto set it, but move threshold up to say 5 or 6. Now, that doesn't make much difference to this area, but what it will do is make a big difference to the amount of sharpening that's applied to the grain. Essentially, as I up the threshold, I'm saying only sharpen larger objects, so obviously the grain will be skipped out. Okay, next tool is going to be gain. Now this stands for grain and noise reduction, or rather grain and noise elimination. It does sound a little bit extreme. What this does is attempts to take some of the grain out. Now this is a particularly grainy image. I am going to use this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for medium gain, and that's just going to compute, and it's just going to slightly soften some of the areas of grain. Now it's quite a minor effect, but if I print it, I'll be able to notice. It's just the way that the sort of the inkjets work on my printer, so I'm glad that that's there. Wouldn't put too much thought into this. I very rarely use it. It's just because this was actually stand developed that I am, so keep that in mind. But if you're shooting slow speed films or you quite like it, don't worry too much. Now the next tool I'm going to use is multiple exposure. This one's quite an interesting one. What I'm going to do here is allow this tool to do another pass over the negative with a slightly sort of higher exposure. And what this does is it will give me a bit more dynamic range, and it will also give me just a smidgen more detail where I've been trying to get it out of this rock. That's really just a one-click option. Doesn't always work. When it does, it can be a lifesaver, so I'm going to leave that on. Okay, we're getting to the end. There's one more tool I want to look at, and that is Auto Adaptive Contrast Optimization. I'm not going to use it, but I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of what it does and when you could use it. What this does is it attempts to bring some of the totally black areas to a very dark shadow tone. Imagine taking 100% black and turning it into 90% black. It gives you a little look into some of the really dark areas and can sometimes bring out some detail. If I go up here now and I click the activate, deactivate, sort of before and after tick, watch what happens to this area of the rock. You see that it goes from pitch black to kind of 95% black. And that's not something I have to worry about for this image because I'm using the multiple exposure. I'm going to get that detail anyway. So I'm going to leave this tool off. I can either turn it off here or click the X and just completely shut down the tool. So that's off, and this is my final selection. Now, the next thing to do, I mean, this is it. We're ready to scan. I'm just going to check my output location. It is going to go to my desktop. I have output this as a TIFF, but I could have output it as a JPEG if I wanted to immediately share it. I think that TIFF's the best. It's essentially a non-compressed form of JPEG. So we're all ready to go, and I'm just going to click scan. Okay, my scan's finished, so let's open up and see what we got. I think that looks pretty good. I like how it came out. I am going to have to do something about that sky though, so here we go. This is a 16:9 crop. There's plenty of detail, and yeah, I really think that the low contrast misty feel works for this image. It was really early in the morning, and the mist, I don't know if it's a specific sea mist or just a misty day, but I'm glad I managed to capture some of it on this FP4. Okay guys, thanks for watching. This is the end of the video. Now, if you've got any more questions, then please don't hesitate to leave a comment. I do try and respond to those. I'm also going to do a quick plug for my next video. I'm going to do a direct link here, and this is for my color scanning video. It's going to be similar. It might be a little bit longer because there's a whole new element of color to deal with. But if you enjoyed this and if this helped you, then the color one will definitely help you. So be sure to check that out. And I hope that some of what I said was helpful. Thanks for watching.